Hello and thanks for hanging out with me. In our recent video on 80% builds, I promised you I'd do a separate video detailing the specific components of my builds if you were interested enough, and many of you said so in the comments. So that's what we'll be doing today. I'll give you all the juicy details on which parts I chose and why I chose them, but first I'd like to introduce you to the luxurious comfort and style inherent in every TNVC purchase. Discriminating connoisseurs like yourself deserve nothing but the finest in low light viewing devices, so stop by and see what TNVC.com can do for you.
Hey, you! Do you want to see in the dark like a superhero? TNVC.com is your source for the finest night vision devices and accessories to make you the bump in the night.
I built two AR-style pistols with my 80% kits with two very different purchases. If you want to know how I built them, you'll have to watch that previous video. Since I want people to actually see this video, I won't be discussing anything about how to build or modify a gun at home in this video. Instead, we'll delve into the components I chose and why I chose them. If you hate my face and you don't like fun, you can skip the whole video and just read the parts list down below with the links and all the details. I'll pin a comment with parts and links. But if you want to hear what I think about all of these accessories and parts and why I chose them, come with me and you'll see the details of this construction. The first build was intended to be a personal defense weapon for everyone in my family to use on camping trips. I wanted it to be as compact as possible so it would be easy to store and for little people to carry around. Of course, the heart of this little blaster is the billet lower receiver from 80% Arms. The portions completed by 80% Arms are well finished with no tool marks at all. It has a flared magazine well and integral trigger guard. The magazine release is where Saint Stoner, peace be upon him, intended it to be. It does have a bolt hold open, but it is not activated by the magazine follower, so it will not automatically hold the bolt open on the last round. And yes, it takes Glock mags. But a lower receiver is nothing without the upper. Naturally, I wanted something short to keep the whole package light and portable, so I started with a 4-inch barreled upper from Stern. A longer barrel doesn't add much terminal effect to the 9mm cartridge, so it may as well be short and light. Don't get me wrong, longer barrels do squeeze more juice, but the velocity gain isn't really enough to produce any significant change in terminal effect. If your desire to know more is intensifying, hit me in the comments and I'll unpack for you. But the TLDR is pistols are still pistols even with a really long barrel. Now I like the styling and the execution of this upper, and it did run flawlessly, but I have to admit I was a little disappointed in the accuracy. Now don't get me wrong, straight blowback pistol caliber carbines aren't exactly known for their accuracy, and it's more than adequate as a personal defense weapon, but it would be more enjoyable to shoot if it could keep the groups just a little bit tighter. Out front, I mounted an Olight PL Pro Valkyrie weapon light because you can't hit what you can't see, and it's dark half the time on this planet. I like the option of attaching a pistol light to the top rail of an AR-type gun because it gives me a lot of flexibility. We reviewed the Valkyrie a while back, so you can have a look at that video right here. But it's face-melting bright, tough enough that I couldn't manage to break it, and the magnetic USB charging is so convenient it could make up for a lot of flaws if I noted any. Bringing up the rear, I used a CAC Shockwave blade style brace to keep weight down and a Sylvan Arms folding adapter to keep it compact so it can be stowed in a backpack, tackle box, or under the seat in front of you. The Sylvan Arms design is very similar to the Law Tactical folding adapter in both form and function. In my less than humble opinion, there are multiple wrong ways to make a folding stock or brace or whatever, and only one right way to do it. The right way is the way this adapter does it, which is to solidly lock in the extended position, but only a couple of ball detents hold it in the folded position so it can be deployed quickly without the need to push any buttons or latches. I topped it off with a new red dot from Primary Arms in a quick detach mount from American Defense Manufacturing. The MD-20 is roughly the same size as an Aimpoint T1 or H1. It has a 2 MOA dot, 50,000 hour battery life, and it auto-magically turns itself on when you pick it up. It has push-button brightness and half MOA windage and elevation adjustments. Now, small red dots are nothing new, but the Auto Live feature is cool, and Primary Arms is building a reputation for tough sights at affordable prices. The bottom line on this one is I'm very pleased with this build. It ended up being the perfect little personal defense blaster. I wanted something short and fun, and it absolutely fits that bill. Now, my goal for the other build was radically different. The primary goal was really just to make a permanent home for an Orphan 300 blackout upper that I've had floating around in my safe for years. It's got an 8-inch barrel and a homemade silencer registered on a Form 1. But even with the additional back pressure from the can, this upper doesn't reliably cycle subsonics. That's one of the problems with 300 that you never really hear the fanboys talking about. Now, they like to say how you can go from full power to subsonic loads with just a magazine change, but honestly, it's not quite true. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can get an AR to cycle both, but only if the gas port is opened up so wide that the gun will beat itself to death. There's just such a huge difference in both pressure and dwell time between subsonic and full power 300 blackout that you can't really do it reliably. So I installed an adjustable gas block from Rifle Speed. This allows me to dial up the gas pressure while shooting subsonic loads and then crank it back down when shooting full power, which allows for less wear on your parts as well as a softer recoil impulse. Now, you might be surprised to know that a pretty big part of felt recoil isn't really from the equal and opposite acceleration of the projectile, but actually from the impact of the bolt carrier at the end of its travel. When you dial an adjustable gas block down, you restrict the flow of gas, reducing volume, which reduces pressure, which reduces the velocity of the bolt carrier, and that means recoil is spread over a longer time frame. If you want to build up a really flat shooting competition rifle, you're going to want a 20-inch barrel, rifle length buffer tube, and an adjustable gas block. This one from Rifle Speed has 12 positions in each of 2 adjustment ranges for a total of 24 possible settings. And that means you can really get your gas system dialed in exactly the way you want it. They also offer adjustment knobs of various lengths, which allows you to set up a rifle with the knob just barely protruding from under the handguard. That way, you can make adjustments without using any tools at all. Now, if you haven't used other adjustable gas blocks, that could seem a little meh to you. But many are a real pain requiring long wrenches. That's not exactly the sort of thing that makes switching between ammo types convenient. Now, I'm using a 7.5-inch handguard on an 8-inch barrel on this build, so there just isn't any room for anything forward of the handguard. But even in this setup, the gas is a snap to adjust. 1, 2, I'll give it 3 clicks. You can use pretty much any old stick to just kind of jam it in there and through one of the holes in your handguard, and it turns easily. I found myself a better handy dandy TSA spec adjustment tool with large tactical handle. If you've got dainty little girl pinkies like mine and the holes in your handguard are large enough, you can even manage it without any tools at all. The standard knob adjusts with very little resistance. Now I actually can swap loads easily, after I determine the optimum gas settings for a given load, of course. Problem solved, problem staying solved. When it came to choosing an optic for this build, Dimitri with Primary Arms had an intriguing suggestion. He pointed out the ballistic drop compensator in their 22 long rifle ACSS reticle on the SLX 1-6 power scope actually matches very closely with most subsonic 300 ballistics. Now, obviously, this varies with projectile weight and velocity and ballistic coefficient, and of course, I'll need to confirm POI at various ranges for any particular load. But it should get me close enough to make ethical shots on javelina at ranges I wouldn't normally attempt with subsonic ammo. Even though this is a 22 scope, you probably shouldn't really think of it as a 22 scope in the sense of it being any less durable. It's actually the same as the 5.56 and 308 scopes from Primary Arms, except for the reticle design. And let me tell you, I have beat several of them absolutely stupid without failure. Bringing up the rear is an SB Tactical SOB brace, which, as braces go, is the model I'm most comfortable using as an arm brace in the manner intended. The flexible rubber and elastic straps make for a comfortable fit. It's also one of the models which seems to trigger the AFT less than others, except for that whole elastic strap thing. For some reason, they hate comfort. Now, if you're sitting there thinking that's all kind of dumb and it's just a stupid range toy, well, you're not wrong. It is indeed a little silly in this configuration, but so is a cannon. See, there's nothing wrong with range toys. Shooting subsonic loads off the bench with the homemade Whisper Pickle attached is fun. And yeah, I can shoot it with one hand to satisfy the definition of handgun in the 68 GCA. See, nothing in the GCA or any other federal law says guns have to be practical for any given purpose. Well, there's that whole sporting purposes clause thing, but that's for imports. People forget that guns are fun, and so long as you're being safe, it's no one's business. But if you insist on a practical purpose for this upper, it would also be useful for hunting off a pack or shooting sticks in the same manner that you would use a Thompson contender. What sort of hunting, you say? Well, I don't think anyone could accuse me of white knighting for 300 blackout, but in this particular case, I do have to admit that subsonic loads would be pretty useful for javelina. They're hideously cute little 40-pound beasties which don't really need a whole lot of killing compared to those absolute unit feral hogs you find in other states. Well, friends, that's my TED Talk. What do you think of these builds? Which parts would you have changed for your own build? Would you like to see a standalone video review on any of these parts? Have I inspired you to build your own guns at home? How about that rifle speed gas block? I had no idea something like that existed until they sent me one. Was there anything on either of these builds I missed which you wanted to hear more about? Ginger or Marianne? If you like what we do and want to help us keep doing it, please support the folks who support us. Without the generous support of our sponsors, I'd have to get a real job, and that would make me sad. I love you.